We're open all hours. Any given day, hundreds upon hundreds of people come through our doors. Whether they're here only briefly or stick around longer, it always seems just as busy at the start of my shift as it is at the end of it. All right, what's going on in here? We've got a great reputation, but in this business, location is practically everything. Unfortunately, our business always seems to be booming. I see a lot of very sick people. But every time we get a patient suffering from a foodborne illness, I have to admit that it strikes close to home. That's because for years, home was my family's restaurant. I grew up in that place, and I worked in it since I was a teenager. I waitressed, washed dishes, managed, you name it. All that pasta, veal, and chicken my parents cooked and I served put me through medical school. It's still there downtown, and it hasn't changed a bit. Seems like I was always on my feet back then, and I still am. So I think that all my medical training and my experience working and managing the restaurant more than qualifies me to talk about foodborne illness and its prevention. But in order for you to really understand foodborne illnesses, here's what you need to know. There's the 4 types of pathogenic microorganisms that can contaminate food and cause illness. Then there's the different conditions that affect the growth of these harmful foodborne microorganisms. You've also got to know and understand the different types of food that support the growth of pathogens. You've got to be able to distinguish between foodborne infections, intoxications, and toxin-mediated infections. Then there's bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi, and the different types of biological, chemical, and physical contaminants. And you have to learn about food allergies. So where do you start? In order to really understand foodborne illnesses, you first need to learn about the microorganisms that cause them. And the first step towards preventing foodborne illness outbreaks in your establishment means that you also have to know about all the conditions that allow the microorganisms to grow. Microorganisms are small. They can only be seen with a microscope. Some are perfectly harmless, but some can spoil food. We call them spoilage microorganisms. Then there's others which can cause illness, and these are called pathogens. Pathogens absolutely have the potential to cause illness when they're consumed. And what makes pathogens even more dangerous than spoilage microorganisms is that, unlike food that's spoiled, food contaminated with pathogens may not look, smell, or taste any different from uncontaminated food. Eating food contaminated with foodborne pathogens or their toxins, which is just another word for poisons, is the leading cause of foodborne illness. Okay, there are 4 types of microorganisms that can contaminate food and cause foodborne illness: bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. And there are 6 conditions that support the growth of these harmful foodborne microorganisms. With the exception of viruses, you can remember these 6 conditions if you use the acronym FAT-TOM. Those initials stand for food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. Let's take a look at the first condition, the food itself. Just like people, foodborne pathogens need nutrients to grow. They typically need carbohydrates and proteins. You can find these in food like meat, poultry, dairy products, cooked rice, pasta, and eggs. The second condition needed for microorganisms to grow is a proper level of acidity. We use pH as a measurement of how acidic or alkaline a food is, and microorganisms grow best in food that has a neutral to slightly acidic pH of 7.5 to 4.6. Unfortunately, the pH of most food falls into this range. Now, the next condition on the list is temperature. Foodborne pathogens grow well on food that's between the temperatures of 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 and 57 Celsius. We call this the temperature danger zone. Food has got to be handled very carefully when it's thawed, cooked, cooled, and reheated. That's because when you're doing any of these things, it could be exposed to the temperature danger zone. Time is another important determining factor in the growth of foodborne pathogens. Under the right conditions, pathogens are capable of doubling their population every 20 minutes. If certain food remains in the temperature danger zone for 4 hours or longer, foodborne pathogens can grow to levels high enough to make someone sick. Oxygen is another factor. Some foodborne pathogens require oxygen to grow, while others grow without any oxygen. Large quantities of improperly hot-held foods, such as soups, stews, and sautéed vegetables, have been associated with certain types of bacteria that grow without oxygen. Now, moisture is the last condition you need to consider. Foodborne pathogens require moisture to grow. The amount of moisture available in food for this growth is called its water activity, or its AW. It's measured on a scale from 0 to 1, with water having a value of 1.0. Food at risk for pathogenic growth typically has a water activity value of 0.85 or higher. I want to underscore just how important all this Fat Tom information is. Just last week, I had a patient admitted through emergency. Young woman in her teens. She was experiencing severe nausea and vomiting. She was also running a fever and complained of severe abdominal cramping and diarrhea. Now, this may not sound like a world-class emergency to you, but when I asked her how she felt at the time, she told me she felt like she was dying, and she was very afraid. Later that evening, another case came through. An elderly man with his wife. Same symptoms. He was also suffering from dehydration. He couldn't even stand up. This looked like a foodborne illness to me, so I took some samples for testing and put the patients into supportive care. Long story short, we got all the test results back, and it was salmonellosis. I notified the local health department, and they got an investigation rolling. Within days, they turned up 18 similar cases at 5 other local hospitals and clinics. The investigation revealed that all the affected patients ate at the same buffet here in town, and they all had the chicken salad. It turns out that the cook didn't check the final internal temperature of the chicken, leading the investigators to believe that the chicken was undercooked. This allowed the salmonella to survive the cooking process. Then, matters were made worse by improperly cooling it at room temperature after cooking. This created ideal conditions for the salmonella bacteria to multiply in the food. All the patients recovered, including those that were hospitalized, but it was tough for all of them. They were here for a week, and that's a long time to feel miserable. So now you see why everyone needs to take Fat Tom very seriously. You have to control the conditions that support the growth of these harmful foodborne microorganisms, and do it all the time. Any type of food can become contaminated, but some are better able to support the rapid growth of pathogenic microorganisms than others. These items are called potentially hazardous food, also known as food that needs time and temperature control for safety, or TCS food for short. Not only do they have a history of being involved in foodborne illness outbreaks, but they also have a natural potential for contamination due to the way they're produced and processed. These food items require time temperature controls to prevent the growth of pathogenic microorganisms and the production of toxins. Potentially hazardous food includes milk and milk products, eggs, except those treated to eliminate salmonella, shellfish and crustaceans, fish, baked potatoes, sliced melons, synthetic ingredients such as textured soy protein in meat alternatives, meat, including beef, pork, and lamb, poultry, raw sprouts and sprout seeds, heat-treated plant food such as cooked rice, beans, and vegetables, tofu or other soy protein, and untreated garlic and oil mixtures. There's another group of food that requires special measures to keep it safe, and this is ready-to-eat food. By that I mean food that's edible without any further washing or cooking. Ready-to-eat food includes washed, whole, or cut fruit and vegetables, deli meats, bakery items, sugars, spices and seasonings, salad, sandwiches, and properly cooked food. Remember that Fat Tom is the key to controlling the growth of pathogenic microorganisms. When you control these conditions, you can help keep food safe. Now, while it can be difficult to control acidity, moisture, and oxygen in an establishment, there are 2 important conditions for growth that you can control: time and temperature. Remember, microorganisms grow well at temperatures between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 and 57 Celsius. So, to control growth, it's important to keep food out of this temperature range by cooking it to, or keeping it at, the proper temperature. Remember, keep hot foods hot and keep cold foods cold. You've also got to deny foodborne pathogens sufficient time to grow. So when you're preparing, thawing, cooling, and reheating potentially hazardous food, you must limit the amount of time it spends in the temperature danger zone. All foodborne illnesses are not the same. They can be either classified as infections, intoxications, or toxin-mediated infections, and each occurs in a different way. Foodborne infections occur when someone eats food containing pathogens. These pathogens then grow in the intestines, causing illness. And even though you might be infected, the symptoms of a foodborne infection typically don't appear right away. Foodborne intoxications, on the other hand, are a result of eating food containing toxins that cause illness. The toxin may have been produced by pathogens found in the food or may be the result of a chemical contamination. The toxin might also be a natural part of a plant or animal that was eaten. Unlike foodborne infections, symptoms of a foodborne intoxication typically appear quickly, within a few hours. The third classification, foodborne toxin-mediated infections, occurs when a person eats food containing pathogenic microorganisms. Those pathogens then produce illness-causing toxins in the intestines. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 types of microorganisms that can contaminate food and cause foodborne illness: bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. The bacteria that cause foodborne illness share some basic characteristics. They're living, single-celled organisms. They can be carried in food, water, soil, animals, or humans. They can reproduce very rapidly under favorable conditions. Some of them can survive freezing. And some bacteria cause illness by producing toxins as they multiply, die, and break down. Some toxins can't be destroyed by cooking the food they've contaminated. Some pathogenic bacteria are very adaptable and can change into a different form, called spores, to protect themselves when nutrients aren't available. Spores are commonly found in soil and can contaminate food grown there, like fruits, vegetables, herbs, and grains. They can also contaminate meat, poultry, fish, and other food exposed to soil or dust. Not only are spores heat-resistant, allowing them to survive cooking temperatures, they can also revert back to a form capable of growth anytime conditions are favorable. For example, when food is exposed to the temperature danger zone for long periods of time. If you're going to keep your food safe, you'll have to make sure this doesn't happen. The second type of pathogenic microorganism is also the smallest: viruses. But size doesn't really matter when it comes to its contamination ability. Viruses share some basic characteristics. Viruses can be transmitted from person to person, from people to food, and from people to food contact surfaces. You'll notice that people play a central role in each of these transmission processes. So viruses usually contaminate food through a food handler's poor personal hygiene. They can contaminate both food and water supplies, and some may survive freezing. Viruses don't grow in food like bacteria do, so they're not affected by the 6 factors for bacterial growth. However, practicing good personal hygiene is an important way to prevent the contamination of food by foodborne viruses. It's especially important to wash hands properly and minimize bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. The third type of pathogenic microorganism is parasites, and they need a host to survive. Parasites infect many animals, such as cows, chickens, pigs, and fish, and then are transmitted to humans when eaten. Some parasites can be found in contaminated water or on produce that's been washed with contaminated water. To prevent illness from parasites, make sure you purchase foods such as meat, seafood, and produce from reputable, approved suppliers. Fish that will be served raw or undercooked has got to be properly frozen by the supplier to eliminate any parasites. The last group of microorganisms that can spoil food and cause foodborne illness is fungi. They can be found naturally in air, soil, plants, water, and some food. Some examples of fungi include mold, yeast, and mushrooms. Let's look at molds first. Here's some of the basic characteristics they share. They grow well in acidic food with low water activity. Refrigerating or freezing food may slow the growth of molds, but it doesn't kill them. While cooking can kill mold cells and spores, some toxins can remain. To avoid illness, you've got to throw out all moldy food. That is, unless the mold is a natural part of the product, like cheese such as gorgonzola, brie, and camembert. The other fungi, yeasts, include some that have the ability to spoil food rapidly. As yeast consumes food, carbon dioxide and alcohol are produced as byproducts. That's why food spoiled by yeast may smell or taste of alcohol and contain gas bubbles. Yeast may appear as a pink discoloration or slime. Yeasts are similar to molds in that they grow well in acidic food with low water activity, such as jellies, jams, syrups, and fruit juice. Needless to say, food that has been spoiled by yeast has got to be thrown out. We've talked about the biological contaminants caused by pathogenic microorganisms. Now let's talk about toxins that are a natural part of the food itself. This happens with certain species of fish and plants. In addition, chemical and physical contaminants pose a significant threat to food. Foodborne intoxication occurs when a person eats food that contains toxins. That toxin may have been produced by pathogens found in the food or could come directly from a plant or animal that they've eaten. As a case in point, toxins in seafood, plants, and mushrooms cause many cases of foodborne illness in the United States each year. Now, when it comes to fish toxins, it's important to remember that cooking the fish doesn't destroy the toxin. While some fish toxins are systemic, meaning they're circulated throughout the body tissues, microorganisms on the surface of the fish produce others. In other cases, toxins occur when predatory fish consume smaller fish that have eaten the toxin. In general, purchasing fish from an approved, reputable supplier is the best way to guard against an illness associated with fish toxins. But you should take the additional precaution of checking the temperature of fish upon delivery and make sure it's been received at 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 Celsius, or lower. If the temperature is higher than that, you should refuse the delivery. And you should also refuse product that's been thawed and refrozen. This is a sure sign that the fish has been time and temperature abused. Now, regarding shellfish, many toxins associated with them are found in toxic marine algae. The shellfish become contaminated as they filter this toxic algae from the water. As with fish, these toxins cannot be smelled or tasted and are not destroyed by freezing or cooking. The best and most important safeguard against foodborne illness here is purchasing shellfish from approved, reputable suppliers. Chemical contaminants are responsible for many cases of foodborne illness. Chemical contamination can come from a variety of substances found in any restaurant and food service establishment. These include toxic metals, pesticides, cleaning products, sanitizers, and lubricants. Utensils and equipment containing toxic metals, such as lead in a pewter pitcher, copper in a saucepan, or zinc in a galvanized bucket, can cause toxic metal poisoning. If acidic food is stored in or prepared with this equipment, the toxic metals can be transferred to the food. So you must prepare and store food in containers made of food-grade materials, and you have to be very careful with any pesticides and chemicals that are kept in the establishment. That includes cleaning products, polishes, lubricants, and sanitizers. All of them can contaminate food if they're not used or stored properly. Here's what you absolutely have to do to prevent contamination and keep food safe. Whenever you're using chemicals, you have to follow the directions supplied by the manufacturer. And if you're using chemicals during operating hours, you've got to be very cautious to prevent contamination of food and food preparation areas. You've also got to store chemicals away from food, utensils, and equipment used for food, and keep them in a separate storage area in their original container. And if chemicals must be transferred to smaller containers or spray bottles, label each container correctly and clearly. There's also the risk of physical contamination to consider. Physical contamination occurs when foreign objects are accidentally introduced into food, or when naturally occurring objects, such as bones and fillets, pose a physical hazard. Common physical contaminants you should watch out for could include metal shavings from cans, staples from cartons, glass from broken light bulbs, blades from plastic or rubber scrapers, fingernails, hair, and bandages, dirt, bones, and fruit pits or seeds like pits in a cherry pie. So, you need to closely inspect the food you receive and handle, and take steps to ensure it will not become contaminated during the flow of food in your operation. The last topic I want to cover, food allergies, is tremendously important to the millions of Americans who suffer from them. A food allergy is the body's negative reaction to a particular food protein. Depending on the person, allergic reactions may occur immediately after the food is eaten or several hours later. Allergic reactions should never be trivialized. They can be very serious and could include some or all of the following symptoms: itching in and around the mouth, face, or scalp, tightening in the throat, wheezing or shortness of breath, hives, swelling of the face, eyes, hands, or feet. Gastrointestinal symptoms including abdominal cramps, vomiting, or diarrhea, loss of consciousness, and even death. These reactions can be very dangerous to your customers with food allergies, so you and your employees need to be aware of the most common food allergens, including milk and dairy products, eggs and egg products, fish, shellfish, wheat, soy and soy products, peanuts, and tree nuts such as walnuts and pecans. You and your staff should be able to inform customers of menu items that contain these potential allergens. To help customers with allergies enjoy a safe meal at your establishment, keep the following points in mind. You and your servers should be able to fully describe each of your menu items when asked. You should tell customers how the item is prepared and identify all ingredients if necessary. If you or your employees don't know if an item is free of an allergen, say so. Then urge the customer to order something else. Finally, when the food is being prepared for a customer with allergies, make very sure that the food makes no contact whatsoever with the ingredient they're allergic to. And make sure all cookware, utensils, and tableware are free of allergens to prevent food contamination. I said that foodborne illnesses hit close to home for me, but the truth is, it always hits close to home for somebody whenever it happens. People suffer needlessly, and it doesn't do your business any good either. So you have to do everything in your power to keep your food and your customers safe. I already have all the business I can handle.